My name is Eileen Lee, and I'm from Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. My question is, we've got a lot of information about what the secret is possibly about. We know that the Pope, the current Pope, has got that information. He's read the document. One of the things that you mentioned, Father Gruner, was the fact that the Pope needs to instruct the cardinals and the bishops to join him in the consecration. Now, what's to prevent him from doing that, even though the expectation might be that maybe not all of the archbishops, not all of the cardinals will join him, but the point is, if we go back to something that Edwin Faust said this morning, he mentioned the fact that Abraham was praying for Sodom and Gomorrah, and the fact that God was prepared to reduce the number of people who were praying and being supportive of what he was expecting of the people at that time. Now, the same is expected of us at this time. What if the Pope, does the consecration and only 3/4 of the cardinals and the archbishops join him? I don't know if you can address that, but I think that's, it's something that we need to look at.
I think that, first of all, I think the vast majority of bishops will obey, because I write to the bishops. I try to write every month. Maybe some of them get tired of me, but I do write to them, and they do reply back to me as well. And I've had over 2,000 bishops. There are 4,700 more or less bishops. About 110 bishops die every year, and so I keep in touch with them. We've had as many as 1,500 at one time endorsing our position in private, but apparently they're not the most powerful bishops. However, even the bishops who oppose me, they're very weak when it comes to saying they will disobey when it comes to consecration of Russia. But there is a very simple answer. It must be the Pope and all the bishops. So how can you get even, say, 5% to obey? And I think that actually there's less than 10 that are strongly against it, who have the courage or the conviction to actually write such a thing in a letter. Now, maybe they say, we don't have to pay attention to Father Gruner, we won't bother telling him. But there is opposition, but it's nothing like the Secretary of State portrays to the Pope. And it's not just one Secretary of State, but it's the last two of them. And I don't know, I've not heard stories about Cardinal Bertone, whether he opposes it or not, other than he himself says, we should not talk about this anymore. You see, people don't understand that there's a whole policy. It's not just the Secretary of State, but there's a whole policy since the Second Vatican Council, which they shouldn't see this as a problem, but they do anyway. But the fact is, all the Pope has to do is give an order upon which the bishops have to lose their office if they don't obey. He can give such an order, and it's defined in the First Vatican Council that the Pope can order all the bishops. He can order all of us for sufficient reason. Now, if anyone wants to think that there's not sufficient reason here, I suppose they can choose not to obey. But if they lose their office by not obeying, then we don't need their obedience. And I would say the vast majority of bishops would obey. So it's not very hard. Now, Lucy answers the question, what about those bishops who are in prison? And there are certainly some of our holiest bishops are actually in prison in China, for example, and have been there for years. They aren't expected to obey because God is not asking the impossible. So if they're constrained by prison or by sickness, if they just simply can't stand on their feet because they're too ill, then God is not expecting that of them. And of course, their non-conformity is not an act of disobedience. It's simply that conditions imposed upon them either by their enemies or by their health. So we would get 100% obedience when the Pope gives the order properly. And it's not that hard for him to do that. I'm speaking now theologically. Now, the second question comes down to, I do have 100 people who work for me, and I understand it's easier to rule by consent than by dictatorship. So I understand, but it shouldn't be that hard to explain the matter. Most people, when they hear what it's all about, any opposition they have, drop it. If he's anticipating opposition, let me go to them. I've yet to find a bishop or anyone I can't answer a question to. I still remember the experience I had when I was in India, and the bishop asked a very intelligent question, and I was saying to myself as he was asking it, I see where he's going with this. I wonder what I'm going to say to him when he answers, because I don't have the answer. As soon as he finished speaking, I had the answer just like that, which reminded me of what I did when I was in theology, when I would oppose, dare I say, heretical professors, and I got so angry with one, I didn't raise my voice, but I actually had to raise my voice to get his attention. I said, what discrimination? He was talking against St. Paul. In the scripture, St. Paul was discriminating against women. I said, he said this every day for a week, and it kept on going. I finally said, against my better judgment, I said, what discrimination? And for the next 20 minutes, he tried to tell me I was wrong in front of the whole class. After 20 minutes, he had nothing left further to say. Now, I didn't know what I was going to say next, but I was praying Hail Marys all the time, and when he was finished, I answered him. By the time we were finished, he never brought it up again once except say, he brought it for 10 seconds and then dropped it. That was it. The answers will come. And I've yet to say, it doesn't have to be me. It could be anybody. Our Lady can use anybody. But if you've got nobody else to explain it to them, I can explain it to them. At least up to now, Providence has provided that way. So I don't think there'll be any opposition, really. And whatever opposition there is to be so small, it wouldn't matter.